Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate you being here as we are presented and brought to you by FanDuel. It is the Sunday night episode, which means we are going to recap Week 11 here for everything that happened in the Big Ten. Zach is away, European vacation. He's treating himself here in the middle of football season, so we had to bring in the backup. We had to bring in the man that Max himself suggested. It is college football with Sam. Gonna have a great time breaking down all these games with Sam. Sam, thank you so much for coming on, and how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks again for bringing me on. This was, especially in the Big Ten, quite an entertaining week of football games. A lot of close games, a lot of entertaining football.
And things are solidifying with the playoff picture. We thought, okay, maybe a little bit of stuff could happen here and there. Washington losing, that definitely ended their playoff hopes. Iowa losing most likely ends theirs. I'd say there's a slim, very, very slim chance for Iowa, but they would have to have some help and not everything would work out the way they want. And then it looked like it was going to be a terrible day for Indiana, but Fernando Mendoza put the team on his back. We'll get to that right after we say hello to the people here in the chat. JR Jr., appreciate you being here. He says one of the rare weekends where Michigan State managed not to lose. Hey, that's an accomplishment, right, Sam?
Yes, they didn't get defeated by the bye, which I don't know if they'd be favored over the bye given how bad they've played this year.
I had them second last in my power rankings for the Big Ten this week.
Wait, who was behind them?
Purdue.
Oh.
Which as I was doing the power rankings, I was like, honestly, I think I could put Purdue above them because Purdue did actually do some things okay against Ohio State. But I was like, I just didn't think about the bottom of my power rankings.
Yeah. So bad.
Yeah,
so
not good.
Bad.
Not good. Max is here. Nice, glad. Shot caller Sam. There you go. That's a new nickname there for you, Sam. Was able to join. Yes. Shot caller Sam. What do you think about that nickname, Sam?
I think it fits given how successful I've been with some of the things that I've called this year. So I think that's a good nickname.
There we go. And we got Rafe here. Fun week. Appreciate you being here. James with the quack, of course. Celebrated all, James. Get the Oregon big win. And Philip has a question for you, Sam, and then we'll get into it here. He says, so Sam is here, so someone will finally fire Locksley because Zach refuses to fire Locksley. Zach, Sam, I know you are not super deep in the Maryland lore, but based off what you've seen from Maryland this season, do you feel like they should fire Mike Locksley?
Well, I know that Malik Washington's tied to him. I imagine a lot of the freshmen and Zion Ely are, and that's very exciting. But how they started and how they look to be finishing is wholly, I think, unacceptable with the schedule they have. And it was the same thing last year. So while the recruiting is kind of trending back up, Locksley, when he first got to Maryland, signed top 25 classes, and that actually didn't do all that much or produce all that much until that 21 and then especially 22 and 23 seasons. I think that Maryland's commitment to NIL in some areas has been good. You've seen that in the recruiting area, but that's not specific to one coach. I think that really they should go after someone who knows how to do more with less. Well, I feel like Locksley's better suited as either a head coach at a school that can recruit better or as an offensive coordinator who can also recruit for the school he's coordinating at.
I tend to agree. I think that Mike Locksley, if he wins one more game, I've said it on here before, I think he stays at Maryland. But unfortunately, I think that Rutgers game was one of their best opportunities for that. I don't think they're going to beat Michigan. I suppose it's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I forget who they're playing at the very end of the season. But I unfortunately, I don't think it's likely that Maryland wins another game this season. Even if they win one more, I don't know if that saves Mike Locksley. So, all right, we'll get to Maryland later on in the show, but first we have to start off with Indiana takes down Penn State 27-24. It looked like, I was kind of not falling asleep during this one, Sam, but I was kind of on my phone a little bit. I was like, okay, Penn State's staying in this, but Indiana's ahead. Okay, they get a field goal. And then Penn State scores a touchdown. I'm like, okay, this is a little interesting. And then Fernando Mendoza throws an interception. I'm like, okay, hold on. Is Penn State going to do something here? Then Penn State scores a touchdown. I'm like, all right, we got a game here, folks. And Fernando Mendoza and his wide receivers drive down the field and manage to score a fantastic touchdown. Omar Cooper in the back of the end zone. I don't think Charlie Becker's catch that set up that touchdown pass gets enough credit there on the sideline. I think that was a fantastic catch by him as well. I know everybody wants to give Fernando Mendoza the credit, and I do think he deserves credit, but I give a lot of credit to those wide receivers for stepping up in this one with Elijah Surratt being out. Charlie Becker made catches all day. Omar Cooper Jr. scores that touchdown there at the end. Sam, what was your take on this game?
That was one of the more emotionally invested games I've been involved with. I was surprised in a way how Indiana was even able to get into that position, because looking it over and talking about it on my show earlier today, they held Penn State to 2.3 yards per carry outside of that long run. But that long run matters because it happened and it set them up to get the touchdown. And they basically held Grunkmeyer to doing nothing outside of like the long touchdown pass, not touchdown pass, but the long 40-yard pass to Pena that again sets up a short touchdown. So Indiana played very poorly and they won, which is good. And I think a lot of the areas in which they played poorly, outside of maybe the pass protection, that being due to the injuries on the offensive line, I think a lot of that is stuff that's pretty easily correctable. Again, outside of that, the injuries in the offensive line, they need to get healthy there, as really any team needs to on the offensive line. It was exciting. It's a testament to Indiana's character. It's a testament to the fact that they were getting pushed around a little bit roster wise, and it felt like they didn't understand how talented of a team Penn State was. And yet they were able to get the game-winning touchdown. And while Mendoza didn't play all that well early on, he showed on that final drive that, Indiana at its best, when it's operating at peak efficiency, is not easy to stop.
No, not at all. And I think that, more than anything with the final drive, Mendoza, with how much he was pressured that entire game. I mean, Fisherman just put in the chat here, gave up 30 pressures on Mendoza that entire game. That's can't do that for your quarterback, but it's outstanding that Fernando Mendoza was able to still be in there in the pocket and still be able to throw. And he also ran for a good amount of yards in this game too. He had 6 carries for 20 yards, but he got sacked 3 times in this game as well. So to have 20 yards after being sacked 3 times, that really speaks to his ability to run and how they were utilizing him and how much he was willing to put his body and everything else on the line for this team. I don't think it gets, Penn State gets enough credit for how many good players they still have in this team. I know, everybody thinks that Penn State just kind of mailed it in, and I get that. But I was even bringing it up on the reaction a little bit. I was like, guys, this Penn State team still has talented players. And Zach and I were kind of talking about it a little bit. I was like, I think Penn State, we can't say Penn State doesn't have a chance here. But, we were kind of like, we think Indiana's going to blow them out. But of course, the first time Zach says that, Indiana doesn't. Doesn't blow them out. So that's the way it works. I do want to get your thoughts, and then we can move on here, Sam, on Heisman Doza after this one. I am of the thought process that this game does not change my opinion on Mendoza for the Heisman all that much. I think that he had a pretty poor game, and some of that was due to the offensive line and stuff. I wouldn't put that all on him, but he was out his wide receiver 1, and he had to kind of make do with a lot of pressure back there, and then he had the game-winning drive. So for me, it kind of all got washed. Like, I still think Mendoza is number 1 or number 2 in the Heisman right now. For some people to say it was the Heisman moment, game-winning drive, I didn't really feel that way, but I'm curious your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza and the Heisman.
I made a Twitter post about it, not in the sense that I thought that was his Heisman moment, but the fact that he made that final drive and it was all pretty seamless and he didn't really do anything wrong on that final drive. And the fact that people would see that is something that would definitely propel it forward. I mean, there's a reason why him and Julian Sayin got closer in Heisman odds after Saturday, despite the fact that Sayin, in terms of stats, actually like gained on Mendoza. It's because of the moment, or the idea that that was a must-win situation where only he and really his receivers could deliver. The O-line wasn't pass blocking well. I mean, he took that sack on the first play of that drive, and you can't run the ball because you don't have any timeouts and you have a minute left. So for me, it doesn't change my thoughts. I think that you would have to give it to uh if if you're voting on the Heisman for being the best player, you'd give it to Jeremiah Smith. That's just my opinion.
Mm.
But um for me, it didn't change my thoughts on Mendoza much. I mean, he's had some games like this for now probably 3 weeks in a row, like Maryland, UCLA didn't play extremely well, but still put up good numbers and had good moments because he's a really good quarterback. Here, you just played a much more talented defense, and it was on the road in a hostile environment that, as much as they probably hate their team for disappointing them, they want the win. So it just all kind of came together, and yeah, that's how you get the 27-24 score.
That's how you do it. So on FanDuel right now, Julian Sayin is the Heisman odds leader at plus 160. But as Sam said, these odds are very close. Fernando Mendoza is right up there at plus 170. Fernando Mendoza, after the game, actually got the lead by a little bit. I tweeted it out, but then that quickly went back down. So I don't know. Maybe my tweet inspired all the Ohio State fans to go put money on Julian Sayin, and then things shifted. So I'll take the credit for that one on my tweet going out there. So all right, Sam. Oregon at Iowa. Oregon wins this one 18-16, and Iowa's special teams was kind of what did him in this game. The long snapper has the bad snap at the beginning of the game, and then Dankin, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He makes an incredible catch on that first snap to be able to bring the ball down. Still punted away. The second snap goes completely over his head. It's a safety, and Oregon ends up winning this game by 2 points. And I felt like Oregon just kind of outdid Iowa, and Iowa's way this game. They ran the ball much better. They dominated special teams. I mean, I know Iowa hit a 58-yard field goal, so we need to definitely give credit there, but they did very well on special teams. They had one interception on the day, but it wasn't a pick six or anything like that. I was very impressed with Oregon going out there, winning this way, especially in inclement weather as well, and for them to come out with the win against Iowa here, it definitely deserves more credit, and there's no reason why Oregon should have dropped in the AP poll after getting this win. It's pretty preposterous in my opinion, but that's a conversation for another day. Sam, your thoughts on this game?
Did they drop behind Ole Miss? Is that they dropped behind?
Yes, Ole Miss beat the Citadel and they moved up one spot. Oregon beat Iowa on the road and they moved down one spot.
Every reputable power ratings has Oregon probably favored by a touchdown over Ole Miss neutral field.
Most power ratings have Ole Miss, like even with Washington, I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I would place if I had extra money, I would place a large sum of money on Oregon to cover like a 7.5 line over Ole Miss. Maybe that's stupid, but Oregon's a really good team, injury regardless, and I think this game showed that. They're going to need to be healthy if they want to win it all, just because no team is infinitely deep at every position. And just so happens to be that some of the positions Oregon's thin at are receiver, and they're down their preseason top 3 wide receivers. Like Stewart's out. Hopefully he'll be back by the playoffs. DeCorian Moore was out. Gary Bryant Jr. got injured in the first quarter. And they ran for over 250 yards on Iowa and were able to put together that final drive very similar to Mendoza's at the end of the game, where they were throwing it all over Iowa, just needed to get in field goal range, though, and not score the touchdown. And like you said, it was basically the title of my reaction video to this game that I released right before I came on here. Oregon beat Iowa at their own game. They made all their field goals. They didn't make special teams errors, and they won the turnover battle. And they out-physicaled them. In fact, it was Iowa who made the 2 explosive passing plays And that is what helped them stay in the game. If not for those longer touchdown passes, and if Dante Moore doesn't try to force it in the end zone early on, this could have been ugly. I mean, this game reminded me a lot of Indiana, Penn State in hindsight. I think these were very similar games where the superior team on a different day with maybe different injury circumstances could win pretty decisively, but instead they were able to look adversity dead in the face and come out with a victory.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that the stable of running backs that Oregon has back there is something that they can look at adversity multiple times this season and just continue to ride those guys. I mean, Noah Whittington, Jordan Davison, he kind of had a wild recruitment a little bit between Ohio State and him, but he goes to Oregon and he's balling out this season. He looks fantastic. Deerhill Jr., Dante Moore got into the game. He got into the rushing game. He had 46 yards on the ground as well. I mean, when you have this kind of ground attack, you can really stay in it with just about any team out there. I mean, when you're able to do that, and then you also have good planning on special teams as well. I thought maybe that this was a game that Iowa would be able to win if they got a pick six, if they got something on special teams, if they kind of got some of that hidden scoring to be able to help them out. But to Oregon's credit, they didn't allow it to happen. They played really solid football. Dante Moore did throw one interception, but Oregon was able to kind of run behind that offensive line. And I think that offensive line looked like the best offensive line on the field in that game. I mean, no disrespect to Iowa, but I thought Iowa had the best offensive line going into that game. And I still think Iowa has, second best offensive line in the Big Ten. But after that performance that Oregon's offensive line put on, I don't think there's any doubt that's the best offensive line in the Big Ten. And I felt pretty good saying it at the preseason, so I'll continue to say it now.
Yeah, it's I mean, they were down Alex Harkey, their right tackle, who's one of their better offensive linemen, and you couldn't really even tell. Dante Moore didn't get sacked. They got down the field pretty often. That is an offensive line with, just due to the size they have and due to how their players played at either previous stops or with Oregon last year, their ceiling was always one of the highest, if not the highest ceilings in the Big Ten. And I mean, the way they run the ball and get downfield, and you saw this against Penn State, you saw it against Indiana at times, though at other times Indiana just pushed them back. They are quick, they are powerful. I mean, it's hard to stop them because oftentimes they weigh more than you, they're stronger than you, they're faster than you. And you saw that where Iowa might, to this point, have a player in Jennings Dunker that's viewed from an NFL standpoint as better than anyone in that offensive line for Oregon, although I don't know because I don't do mock drafts or a ton of NFL stuff. But in totality, what they're able to do where they can bring in multiple offensive linemen or tight ends to do max protect passes, or the way they can get down the field 10 plus yards on blocks, is something I don't really see out of any other offensive line in the Big Ten.
Totally agree. I mean, the combination of Will Stein right now and Alik Terry, the offensive line coach for Oregon, who, in my opinion, is the best offensive line coach in all of college football. That's why I was confident going into this game. For them to be out, Kenyon Sadiq too. We didn't even mention him. You mentioned Alex
Oh,
Harkey,
yes.
but Kenyon Sadiq to not be in there either. It's a huge accomplishment, and it really speaks to this Oregon team and how Dan Laney got these guys up, and just what a motivator and everything he is as well. Before I move on, Sam, any thoughts on Iowa? I mentioned at the beginning they have a slight chance of making the playoffs if they beat USC. If Nebraska continues to win games and they're ranked by the end and they beat them, they would have a case there. I don't think it's going to happen. They'll need some help, but I definitely wouldn't say it's not possible at all. Any thoughts on Iowa?
I'll come out and say it's not possible for the sad fact that Iowa State has completely fallen apart ever since that game. And also the idea that Penn State's not good. So if Penn State were good, this would be a schedule that would only be behind Wisconsin's in the Big Ten, because you play at minimum a Penn State team that goes 9-3 or 10-2. Indiana still wins 11 games. Oregon wins 10 or 11 games, and that's different. But this Penn State team, record wise, is horrible. power ratings wise is just above average or good. And yeah, I think that unfortunately, it's not possible. But maybe I'm wrong here. I mean, if there's a ton of chaos and a bunch of teams lose, and you know, Michigan drops it to Ohio State, and some of the other 2-loss teams get 3 losses, Iowa's played a tough enough regimen with Oregon and Indiana on that schedule to where they have something to hang their hat on for sure. Same with USC too on the schedule.
Yeah, and you see teams like Notre Dame get credit for some of their bigger teams that they've lost to, and so I think you're exactly right. If it wasn't for Iowa State, or even if at least Iowa State was at least kind of respectable good, and I know that they were good at the beginning of the season, but injuries have kind of not really helped them. But I don't think people look at that kind of stuff enough. They're just going to see Iowa State not good team. They lost to them at the beginning of the season. Can't put Iowa in the playoffs, and so yeah, if it's not impossible, it's very very unlikely that it happens. So all right, let's move on here to Washington. Oh my gosh, Washington, what have you done? Washington lost at Wisconsin. Sam, I thought in the preview, I was like, okay, I'm gonna say it. I think Washington can lose this game, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna say it. I don't want to put that kind of bad juju on Washington, and I didn't want the Washington fans to come for me. I was like, I just don't say it. Like Washington's gonna win this game. Yes, it's on the road. Yes, there could be some weather, but they should be fine. Like they have a healthier offensive line. They should be fine. It was not fine. Jonah Coleman goes out in that game, and Jonah Coleman was the type of running back you want in that game, right? I mean, big bowling
Yes.
ball, able to kind of move people around, and not going to say anything bad about Adam Muhammad. He did okay. It's not like he was terrible in the game or anything, but Jonah Coleman would have been such a nice piece for you to have. Damon Williams just kind of refusing to throw the ball at the end of the game because it was so wet, and eventually Wisconsin's just like, yeah, we're going to spy you. To think that Washington couldn't throw the ball against such a poor secondary for Wisconsin pretty much all year. It was really really tough, and just another poor road performance by Washington this season. They will probably not be ranked for the rest of the season, even if they continue to win out. I don't think so. And it's a really sad day for Washington fans, but a very happy day for Wisconsin fans who get their first win in the Big Ten. Sam, your thoughts on Wisconsin, them winning this game? Their punter is their leading passer in the game. Amazing defense from Mike Tressel and the boys. What are your thoughts, Sam?
That was the worst possible way that Washington could have lost any game this year. I mean, if they lose to Purdue at home, that one ups it. But this was pretty bad. Like you mentioned, their punter was their leading passer. Um, if not for him, they would have averaged less than 2 yards per pass attempt. So that's horrible. They weren't even effective at running the football all that much. But they did it well enough to move the ball at times and punch it into the end zone. What I look at here is between Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio State, who are probably the 3 best defensive fronts Washington's played all season long. Maybe Illinois, but I don't think Illinois is like, maybe they're better than Wisconsin, but they're not better than Michigan or
I,
Ohio
I
State.
want to put Illinois above Wisconsin. I give it to Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll go with that. I would think so too, but I just in case wanted to give Illinois some credit there. But with that being said, they have scored 26 points, Washington has, against Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin combined. Their offense is averaging less than 9 points per game against teams with great defensive fronts because they're incapable of scaling their offense against teams that can get pressure on the quarterback and that can shut down their rushing attack because their offensive line just isn't that good. And Coleman being out, Denzel Boston limping off the field for like a series or so, and then coming back in. They're a thin team that isn't solid in the trenches. And as you get into November and you have all those hits and tackles, you can begin to fall apart if that's how you're constructed. And I fear that Washington's at that point now where their offense, well, look, Jed Fish is a great offensive mind. They have great players there, but it's been figured out because they're limited in what they can do. And on top of that, they're suffering injuries. And It's not good when, well, you should beat Purdue. I think you'll beat Purdue. You have a trip to UCLA before the Oregon game, and Oregon's defensive front is it's better than Wisconsin's, it's better than Michigan's, it's probably closer to Ohio State's than it is to Michigan's. Like it's those linebackers and that defensive line, and then if you want to include maybe Thieneman or whichever one of their safeties can come down in the box, I just do not see how this team is going to have much success for the rest of the year.
Mm. I tend to agree. I think unfortunately for Washington, which I don't know, might be kind of fortunate too, because I think if Jed Fish was winning a little bit, you might hear him involved in some of these coaching searches a little bit more. But I don't think you're going to hear him, Florida going after him or anything like that, especially after this after this loss to Wisconsin here. But the other one that is kind of an interesting coaching situation. This is the last thing we'll say here, and then we'll move on. Is Luke Fickell, Sam? Luke Fickell looks like he's going to be fired. He only wins 2 games. He wins his 3rd game of the season, his first Big Ten win, a ranked win. He's got more ranked wins than Matt Rule at Nebraska. Sorry, Nebraska fans. That was mean. I shouldn't have said that. I feel bad.
So bad.
But he has more ranked wins, and Luke Fickell now has some Wisconsin fans saying, okay, maybe we can get along with this. Like, maybe this is okay. We saw the team kind of rally together. They're able to get the win here. Sam, what are your thoughts on Luke Fickell? Did you think he should have been fired before he got the vote of confidence? Now, does it change your opinion at all on him? What are your thoughts?
I need to see what they do in the preseason with their portal moves and staff changes and how that aligns with the schools on their schedule making changes before I give any vote of confidence. I mean, like we mentioned, they couldn't pass the ball. They struggled to run. The defense played lights out, but we've seen this defense for much of this year, like they do really good at, limiting the offenses initially, but they either get gotten through the air or Oregon. And brief side tangent. This is where, as bad as Oregon played against Wisconsin, what I was really impressed about them is like Michigan, outside of one explosive play, really struggled to run on them. Ohio State could not. Alabama, like even worse. Oregon was able to like physically break them and run on them in that entire second half, which was quite the showing. So I don't know what's there. I think there's a very limited pocket of talent that probably exists on D-line and linebacker. And unless he's able to keep all of that, if they have eligibility there, and make portal upgrades and probably make some staff changes, and all of it pans out, I still don't think this will work. I mean, they're 30.5-point underdogs to Indiana. What will Wisconsin fans be saying after Cignetti against Penn State has a ton of things to chew his team out over on film, and they get to return for homecoming? Like, you could lose that game 56-0, and we'll be back here on the drawing board. I hope it works out. I really do. But you probably, if you're going to vote confidence for him entering next year, you need to see how things go in the preseason. And with Illinois and Minnesota, you should be able to probably win one of those games, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong, though.
I think so too. I think Illinois is probably the more difficult one with the way Luke Altmaier is playing and the way that secondary has been. Not that I'm totally down on Drake Lindsey. I think Drake Lindsey has had a pretty good season for the type of team he's on and stuff like right now. And I don't mean that in a discredit to the team. I mean that more so in the fact that it's been a tough season for Minnesota with the injuries to Darius Taylor and some of that kind of stuff. But overall, I think that Drake Lindsey is a good quarterback. It's just Luke Altmaier has been really, really good this season. I think that's probably the area that I think more. But Illinois also has more of the offensive line issues that we've seen this season. So who knows? All right, we'll kind of go through these final ones a little bit rapid fire, Sam, and then we'll get you out of here because we do have the second half of the episode to do, as we're going to talk about Big Ten private capital investments, all that stuff. We're going to get to that here in just a little bit, but let's finish it out with these few games. Sam, Nebraska wins 28-21 over UCLA. UCLA gave their best fight, but TJ Lateef looked like a really good quarterback. I mean, there were points in this game when I was like, okay, hold on. Does Nebraska look better with TJ Lateef than Dylan Raiola? And then I had to say, oh yeah, Emmett Johnson is just destroying this UCLA team. Not trying to say that TJ Lateef wasn't good, but it's easy to look good when you have Emmett Johnson doing what he was doing in this game. Sam, what were your thoughts on Nebraska's win over UCLA?
Emmett Johnson has 14 total touchdowns and almost 1,500 all-purpose yards. That guy is an All-American, I think. And if a few teams had him, I think especially like Indiana and Ohio State, especially Ohio State, but Indiana too. Like
I was
if
just
those,
about to say that. Could you imagine what this Ohio State offense would look like if Emmett Johnson was on
oh
the
yeah,
offense?
it would be you'd be scoring an additional touchdown given per game, and that would totally. I mean, I have Ohio State number one, but that would totally change my view of them because it probably would. It'd give them a whole different angle of attack, and I think for Indiana, like I think Hemby's really good, and they're okay at running back depth, but Johnson is just the quickness, the change of direction and speed. It's all there. And with Lateef, what they can do, especially since the offensive line has improved over the previous 3 games, I don't know how or why, but thankfully they have, is they can use him as another element in the ground game. And now that he's put on tape that against UCLA, he can deliver the ball accurately on time in the torso of his receivers. I think that my view of Nebraska has changed to from before this game. I thought, oh, they might be screwed having to play him. Now I'm thinking this doesn't actually change all that much given their final opponents. Like, was Raiola ever going to be dotting up the Iowa secondary? I mean, maybe, but probably not. What about with Penn State, especially with how, like, against Ohio State and Indiana, back to back, they've had tons of pressures, like tons of them. I think they had close to 20 on Ohio State. They had 30 on Indiana. Like, not always blitzing, sometimes just sending 4. I think that Lateef can do things in this offense, given some of the circumstances that Raiola couldn't. Still think Raiola's the better quarterback, but it's nice to know you have someone like that in your back pocket where you think this could be a season-ending injury, and now Nebraska's here staring down possibly an 8-4 or even 9-3 season, which would be a tremendous success in year three of Matt Rule.
Totally agree. 8 wins was exactly what I was saying Nebraska needs to do this season. If you get to the college football playoffs, fantastic. I didn't think it was going to happen, but if they got there, great. I think 8 wins is the mark you need to get at. And I agree with you. I think Raiola is still the better quarterback, but just for what this Nebraska team is, it feels like Lateef can do a few things better. Maybe defenses will get used to him. I'll be eating my words in a couple weeks. That's fine. But at least after this game, he drops back, he hits his back foot, looks to his first read. If it's not there, boom, he runs away. And with Dylan Raiola, you just kind of saw him holding the ball too long. You don't have great run protection from your running backs there as well. I mean, you're asking Emmett Johnson to do a lot for that team with run protection, running the ball, catching the ball as well. So when you can get a guy in there to kind of make some plays himself with his feet, that definitely helps too. So, all right, let's move on to Northwestern at USC. USC gets the win in this one, Sam, and Northwestern made it a game there in the first half, and Northwestern almost went up 21-14, but of course Jada Mayava gets the tackle, fumble into the end zone, touchback. 3 plays later, 80 yards, touchdown for USC, and it just kind of felt like that was just kind of encompassed Northwestern a little bit this season. It's like, man, we had this, we were kind of close, and then it's just something happened to us to really knock us down, and then USC scores 17 points in the second half. Northwestern only scores 3. What were your thoughts on the Trojans' victories here over the Wildcats?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking with USC is healthy enough to still play at a high level? Like they're not deep, but they're not totally banged up. And coincidentally, Oregon, where they can't afford to get hurt, is hurt. And now it like they can actually win, whereas preseason everyone understandably chalked it up as a loss.
I still am questionable about the run defense because of what we saw against Notre Dame.
Agreed.
With Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. But of course, that's Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, the best running back combo in the country for my money. So, Oregon's not necessarily going to, go out there and have those guys play, but I would still be concerned about that. However, I do think you make a great point that that is favorable for USC with Oregon's injuries issues right now.
Yeah, I would think the same thing too. Notre Dame is the better running back group. I'd have to watch more Notre Dame, but intuitively looking at stuff like havoc rate and TFLs allowed, I think Oregon's run blocking O line's probably better, but I'd have to don't fact check me on that. I could very well be wrong. Point I'm trying to make is that USC is playing well enough and they're physical enough and they're healthy enough to where they're not going to win it all, like absolutely not, but they could reach the playoffs. There is a it's very much like Michigan. I think Michigan's path is easier because they get Ohio State at home instead of Iowa at home, and then you follow that right up with Oregon on the road. I think that's a much more difficult stretch against top 25 power rated teams, but it's still plausible. It's possible that USC can maybe win out here. And if they do at 10-2, they're getting in. Like, I know there's that tiebreaker scenario with Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's firmly in if they win out. That's what the CFP committee is telling you by ranking them that high this early when they have an opportunity to beat a ranked Pitt. If USC goes 10-2, they're getting in. That's what will happen. And I think this is a game where early on you give up points to Northwestern, you throw nearly a pick six, but then your quarterback has the toughness and sacrifice to try to stop it. He forces the fumble. That changes the momentum. And then from there on out, USC goes on a 24-3 run, and the game's never really in doubt from there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that USC no doubt has a chance to beat Oregon, and if they do beat Oregon, they're definitely going to the playoffs. I think they could beat Oregon, and if they lose to Iowa, because Oregon is on the road, you have a possibility of making the playoffs. Don't think it's likely, but you have the possibility of it happening. However, you're exactly right. If USC goes 10-2, they're absolutely in the playoffs. I know they have like the Notre Dame thing up there as well, but you would have better wins than Notre Dame has right now. And sure, there might be some head to head stuff there, but as we see with Notre Dame and Miami, the team that is hot is going to be the team that's ranked higher. So you could definitely see that happening there. All right, let's move on. Two more games left, and then we're going to get Sam out of here. Sam, Ohio State, they do not cover for the first time. Well, I shouldn't say I think they had a push one time this season, but the opposing team covers against Ohio State for the first time this season. Purdue gets a late score touchdown. Ohio State, this was like the most boring 34-10 win I think I've ever seen. Like Ohio State just went out there, and in a week when they're launching Heisman campaigns for their starting quarterback and their starting wide receiver, they're running the ball the entire game. And I'm like, what in the and then they're taking Julian Sayin out of the game to put Lincoln Keenholz in there for him to go run in a touchdown. I'm like, okay, yeah, just win the game. But seems a little strange to me that you'd start a Heisman campaign and then not just let things loose. Now, Ohio State did have some injuries. Their right tackle was out in this game. Their backup right guard, who's been getting some time, he was out in this one. Carnell Tate tweaked something in the beginning that brought him out. I think those are all the injuries. There may have been another one or two that I'm missing, but Ohio State was a little banged up on offense in this one. They still go out there, score 34 points, and take down Purdue exactly pretty much the way they should at this point. Go out there, don't run a lot of plays, get the win, and move on. Your thoughts on this game, Sam?
Those are my exact thoughts. I think that Ohio State this Saturday showed that they're the number one team in America, but also with how their style of play has been all year and with how this game transpired, they're number one, but they're not number one in the same way that Georgia was in 2021, where like how in the world did Alabama beat that team? Like how? They're number one. and their defense is number one. Their passing offense, like when it's functioning properly, is number one, and when it's not, it's still top 10. Their rushing offense is good in extremely short yardage situations because they don't allow a ton of TFLs, but they still struggle to, break off long runs or like get to the second level and stuff like that. It's I mean, honestly, it it's an interesting year in football. Ohio State's number one. I don't have a lot of takeaways because it's Purdue, and when you outscore a team 24-0 in a quarter, I just tip my cap and say, okay, yeah, you're really good and you can win it all. And I've known that about Ohio State since the preseason, really. One thing I will say is Julian Sayan's phenomenal, but Jeremiah Smith needs to win that Heisman trophy if we're going to take the award seriously. I mean, it's so clear to me that he is not just the best player in America, but that he is very fundamental to this offense in a way that like Micah Parsons was to Penn State's defense when he was there, or Chase Young was to Ohio State's defense, or Aiden Hutchinson to Michigan's that one year, or like or you get the point. Like take him out of the equation, and I promise you this, like it's not even close to horrible because it's Day's offense, but things look different. And by himself, he is the not just most talented, but best player and performs at the highest level in all of America. So he should get the award, and Sayan should be invited because Sayan, the quick release, the accuracy, it's NFL level stuff. And I'm happy for him and happy for Day that this could all work out this way in year one. That's a strong testament to that program.
The only thing I'll say before we move on is the scary thing for college football is they're both coming back next year. They're both in their second year. They got one more year left of college, unless one of them tries to pull a Maurice Claret or something. Yeah, they're coming back next year. So
Yes.
have fun with that college football. All right, final game here. Rutgers wins 35-20 over Maryland. The hot seat is getting hotter and hotter for Mike Locksley. Malik Washington, only 98 total yards throwing in this one, 164 yards rushing after he had a 73-yard rushing touchdown at the beginning of the game. But the story of the game was Antoine Raymond, 41 carries, 240 yards, one touchdown. And Ethan Kaliak-Manis only has 13 completions, but he has 229 yards, and 4 of those 13 completions were touchdowns. Ian Strong had 3 reception touchdowns, and DT Sheffield had one of them as well. Sam, just real quick, your thoughts on Rutgers' win over Maryland?
He had like, what is it? He had like a 260 passer rating, I think, despite throwing 2 picks. It's just, it's a crazy stat line. And Maryland has been so dominant in so many defensive metrics, but I felt like early on they were a bit of a paper tiger. I think after suffering defeat over defeat over defeat, and then Indiana totally mollywhopping them, that they're breaking now. And Rutgers, we've seen that as they've gotten further away from the Chris Ash era, and as Loxley's recruiting classes have leveled off or decreased, we've seen Schiano like beat him last year pretty decisively. If I remember correctly, beat him this year by 15. I think this is just coaching. Like Schiano's a better coach than Loxley and is catching up in the world of roster building. And Maryland is just defeat after defeat after defeat. That wears on you very quickly.
Last question, Sam, and then we'll get out of here, or we'll get you out of here. I'm going to stick around, and we're going to bring Greg on after this. Ohio State and Penn State, final 2 games for Rutgers. Any chance that Rutgers gets to a bowl? They're 5-4 right now, I believe it is, or 5-5. I apologize. They have 2 games left. Any chance? I don't think they beat Ohio State, but they get Rutgers or they get Penn State at home. Is there any chance?
Oh yeah, because you get Penn State at home, and Penn State's like, you saw this against Indiana a bit, where if they have Surratt, or I'll be even bolder and say, if Indiana just approaches this game differently, they probably, like, it's never in doubt. With those receivers and Kaliak Manis, depending on where Penn State's at mentally, and even if they are mentally in a good place, they could shred that secondary and come away with a win. I actually like, just due to placement and style of play, I honestly like Rutgers' chances at home against Penn State better than Nebraska's chances on the road at Penn State.
All right, there you have it. You got some hope there, Rutgers fans, coming from college football with Sam. And hey, we do have some Rutgers fans that watch this show, so
That's awesome.
and I'm sure they're very very excited after the win over Maryland. So, all right, Sam, thank you for being so gracious with your time tonight. As most people probably already know where to find you at, if there is some poor soul out there that does not know where to find your content, tell them where they can find you at really fast.
Just search up College Football with Sam on YouTube, Twitter, same thing, and pay attention to Instagram and TikTok because we're going to be up there pretty shortly.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Sam, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to the second half of the episode, and we will say adios to Sam and go check out his content. So, all right, great stuff from Sam. We're going to bring in Greg Pflugar now of Peek Around the Corner. I'm going to go ahead and do the intro for the second part, and then we will bring Greg in. We're going to talk about all this Big Ten, Michigan, USC drama that's going on. Greg does a great job of covering it on his channel. Let me do the intro really fast, and then we'll bring Greg in. Here we go. Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle presented by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here as we are going to get to the Big Ten UC Investments $2.4 billion deal that's out there. Normally, we do our AP poll reactions, but with the College Football Playoff top 25 coming out, we're going to do this instead. We're going to kind of do this like a news and notes episode coming out of the weekend with Greg Pflugar today covering this UC Investments $2.4 billion deal. Let's bring Greg in here. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Let people know where they can find your content at before we get started.
Yeah, thanks, John, for the invite. I appreciate it. Sam did a fantastic job, by the way. That was awesome.
Sam was great.
Yeah. College football, Speak Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar on YouTube, and you can find me on X at Flug Empire. And that's about it. That's where you find me.
There you go. All right. Well, Greg, we have so much to talk about with everything going on with the UC investments, the $2.4 billion. If there is anybody that just came in and realized Zach is not here, Zach is out of town. He's on vacation, so we brought in a couple of guests to have some experts here on a few different areas. And Greg is definitely covering the UC investments, $2.4 billion with the Big Ten, better than just about anybody else out there. Because what we have going on right now is we have a lot of people coming out and being very much so against this deal. And I'm not saying that this is a great deal and this is something that SEC should take, but this is something that I think does have some misinformation out there. I don't think we're going to be telling anybody that you should like the deal or you shouldn't like the deal today, but I do want to go over what the deal is, why this is something that does need to have a little bit more consideration than just, oh, private equity, it sucks, it's terrible, and we also need to figure out what the heck is going on with Michigan and USC. So, Greg, if you could go ahead and just go over for everybody really fast. This is not a private equity deal. You've talked about that numerous times on your show. Go over kind of the highlights, what this deal is, why it's different from a private equity, and if there is any common misconceptions you see out there that you might correct.
This is thank you so much, John, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I appreciate it on your channel. Now, first of all, I do not know if I do not know if I'm for this deal or not, because I don't think we know enough about it. At least I don't know enough about it, particularly around the Big Ten enterprise part of it. Because if it's just about the cash, I don't know if it's a deal that the 16 or 18 Big Ten universities should take. But the deal is basically a UC investment. They have a portfolio of $200 billion. They valued the Big Ten at $24 billion, taking 10% stake at $2.4 billion. So what they're doing, UC Investment thinks they're going to make more than the $2.4 billion, a lot more. in the 20 years that this deal would go for, 2026 to 2046. For this deal to happen among the 16 schools or the 18 schools, the grant of rights would have to be extended from 2036 to 2046. Right now, the Big Ten grant of rights goes to 2036. And what the grant of rights does, it gives the conference, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, all the Big Ten institutions, your media content is owned by the Big Ten until 2036. Okay. So you see,
and just real quick, there's an important distinction there, because I see a lot of people saying, well, the ACC just did that. The distinction there is the ACC did that with ESPN, not just the ACC, correct?
But the distinction is the Big Ten. There are two separate documents. There's the grant of rights, and then there is your media package, your media rights. So in the ACC, when they had the grant of rights going to 2036, their media rights, their current tier 1 media rights also goes to 2036. So they're not renegotiating their media rights all the way into 2036. That's why Florida State and Clemson went to the courts to say, we want to find a way to get out of this grant of rights, because we can't afford the ACC to keep paying us what we're getting paid all the way to 2036, while the Big Ten gets to re-up theirs in 2030 again, right? And the SEC gets to re-up there in 2034. So in the Big Ten, the grant of rights go to 2036. So the Big Ten owns Minnesota, Illinois, all the Big Ten institution media rights. But our current media rights package, the contract with CBS, NBC, Fox, Peacock, that goes to 2030. So we are going to be renegotiating our contract regardless of anything that else is happening in 2029 and 2030. But for UC Investment to give $2.4 billion, they want to know that this conference is going to hold together for 20 years, not until 2036, but to 2046. So it's never been really a concern, right, among Big Ten institutions. It's like, we've been around since 1896. Right? The Ohio State Buckeyes have been part of the conference since 1919. Michigan is the quintessential Big Ten university. I mean, Michigan is, wow, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to offend anybody, but they are an incredible brand, an incredible university, a large research university. And John, you know this, Michigan has been very particular in who they would invite into the conference. Okay, I mean, I'm going to be blunt. A Florida State, which a lot of Big Ten fans want Florida State to join the Big Ten, get the state of Florida in the Big Ten. Michigan is most likely against that addition. Okay, that's how particularly Michigan is. So for Michigan to come out, and maybe they're against the deal for good reasons, right? But for them to say, or at least in the reports of Ross Dellinger, that they're not really comfortable with the grant of rights going from 2036 to 2046, it's like, where are you going to go, Michigan, right? Where are you going to go? Because you are so, for a lack of a better term, you are so elitist, right? Where you're not going to go to the Big 12. You're not going to go to the SEC. You're not. You're just not. Maybe you go to the ACC, but you're probably not going to do that because the value is not there. So the question is Michigan and USC being against this deal? And they may have great reasons to be against the deal. Okay. I don't know if I'm for the deal. But according to reports, John, Michigan is not comfortable with extending the rights to 2036 to the grant rights from 2036 to 2046 because they want their options to be open in 2036. Ohio State's willing to extend it. Penn State is willing to extend it. Of course, Oregon and Washington just got here. They want to extend it. Illinois wants to extend it. Everybody else they have no problems with this, right? Because where are we going to go? I mean, what's going to happen? The possibility of some Big Ten, some SEC, the top brands getting together to form a super league, right? 2036. Is that the option that Michigan wants to leave open, John? Maybe, in theory, but it's Michigan. Michigan, I don't even think they would invite Tennessee into the conference if they wanted, so it doesn't, there's a lot of it that in that sense doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things that not everybody understands when it comes to this stuff, because the reports did come out today. I think Ross Sellinger was the one that was reporting it most widely, that the Big Ten is essentially telling Michigan and USC, look, either, get on with us or we're leaving you behind, because the other 16 teams in the conference want to do this, and we can argue all day on whether they should do it, they should not do it. I think it's important to know exactly what it is before we have those arguments. So that's why I kind of wanted to start with that, but go ahead.
Okay. So the deal would be $2.4 billion, right? Mm-hmm. Each institution would get a cash infusion right off the bat. It's going to range between $190 million to, I think, $100 million. We've been told it's at $100 or more million per school. According to reports of today, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State would get $190 million cash infusion right off the bat. Oregon and USC would get $140 million. And then the rest of us would get less than that, between 100 and 140 million. Okay. That's the cash infusion part, which would total to be $2.4 billion. Then there is this thing called the Big Ten Enterprises that's going to be formed. And I think this is where potentially, but I really don't know, but potentially this is where the true value of the deal exists. This is what all the conferences are trying to create, John. They're trying to create a strategic partner going forward. The SEC is talking to Goldman Sachs. The Big 12 has had many, many discussions with people. Everyone is trying to push out their brand, push out their conference, push out their institutions to other markets. Europe, Middle East, all that big money sitting out there, all that new sponsorship money sitting out there. So they're trying to create a strategic partnership. The Big Ten, there are true believers in this Big Ten enterprise. True believers. This Big Ten enterprise would give a stake of the conference to each institution, plus the Big Ten conference itself, plus UC investments. Excuse me. UC investments would start out at 10% of the stake, okay, of the conference. According to reports, Ohio State would receive 5.5%, Michigan 5.5%, Penn State 5.5%, Oregon and USC would receive 5%, and then the rest of us would be less than that, okay? So that is so this Big Ten Enterprises, which everyone, not everyone, but Ohio State and the big dogs and us little dogs are convinced that this for-profit entity, Big Ten Enterprises, is going to be able to take all of our content, just like what we do in media, right? We take all Illinois, Minnesota, everybody's content and sell it as a big bundle. We get more value that way. The Big Ten network is built upon that. All that third-tier content bundled together is a lot more valuable to Minnesota and Illinois versus what the Longhorn network could do for Texas. And that's why Texas got rid of it and went to the SEC network happily, because more bundled live content together is more valuable than a standalone. So that is what they're thinking about, like selling jersey patches on jersey, right? Isn't more profitable for all 18 schools to get together and have all these sponsorship bid on the jersey patch of Big Ten football, on Big Ten hockey, on Big Ten basketball? Or is it more advantageous for us to do it all alone, right? Well, obviously, most of the Big Ten institutions believe it's going to be more valuable for us to come together and sell it as one, because there's more power in that. So that's one example what the Big Ten Enterprises is going to do. I wish I had more information on it. None of us has any, or at least that I know of, any information of what this is going to look like. It sounds like it could be a 10-member board. It's going to have a CEO. Who's going to be the CEO? Is it going to be John? We don't know, right? So we don't know what this thing, but this is what I believe, what I've been told, that Ohio State truly believes in, that Penn State they all believe in this. They think they're going to get all this more money in the next 20 years with this Big Ten Enterprises. And you mentioned how there's a lot of critics out there, right? Right?
Yes. There are many critics out there right now, and I get where they're coming from.
Yep.
I get where they're coming from. Yeah.
Yep. Here's no matter what the Big Ten does or not do, they're going to be panned universally, right? They're going to be criticized. That's just the way it's set up. I don't want to sound like a victim, or I don't want John to sound like the Big Ten, but that's just the way it is, guys. Most of the college football reporters out there do not want to ever lose access to SEC, to ESPN, to Greg Sankey, and we're out. The Big Ten is the easy way to go for them on a daily basis. So no matter what the Big Ten does, they're going to get criticized. The creation of the Big Ten Network, that was panned universally. When the Big Ten separated from ESPN, that was panned universally. Basically, almost every Big Ten expansion has been panned universally. Like, no matter what the Big Ten does. If the Big Ten wants a larger college football playoff format, every single college football reporter basically is against it. Ross Dellinger comes out and says the SEC is also thinking about a 28-32 team playoff format, but none of the reporters will take a shot at them because they do not want to lose that access.
I have been saying that for so many months, Greg. You hit the nail on the head. The Athletic was the one that broke it, and nobody was talking about that the SEC wanted just as many teams, if not more, in the playoffs. It is astounding to me, and I have been to Big Ten Media Days. I've not been to SEC Media Days, but I have heard from friends who have been to those things that, just how much these conferences try to get media on their side. And I'm not saying it's wrong that they should, because good media definitely helps you out. Yeah. But the SEC does really try to do that, and you see a lot of benefit for them from it. The Big Ten Media Days, they don't try to do that as much. I mean, you get like a free meal and some water, and that's about it. These SEC Media Days, they kind of cater to them a little bit more, and it really helps out. And I do think that is shaping a lot of people's thought process when you see every person out there, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but just a few names, like Stuart Mandel has been out there a lot criticizing the Big Ten. There were a couple people today on Twitter that were criticizing the Big Ten a lot for something like this. And my message is always read it for yourself, think for yourself about it, because there are people in media that do want to just try to shape the narrative in a certain way because of their personal feelings on it.
Yeah, they a lot of them have an axe to grind, and then John, like, if we all wake up on November 21st and this deal gets done, right? Let's say it gets done. And then we'll get into the ramifications if it's 16 versus 18 schools, because that whole thing is wild, right? But let's say we wake up on November 21st and the deal gets done. Okay. Well, what's probably going to happen, let's just pretend it does happen. Let's say the SEC follows up and does basically the same type of deal with a different capital, non-private equity firm, because it's not a private equity deal. There's not a private equity firm, public capital. Let's say the SEC does the exact same thing, but they do it with some Florida pension fund, whatever. And they create the SEC enterprise thing. Well, they're not doing it. They're not going to follow up and do it after the Big Ten does it because they think it's a bad idea, right? They're going to do it because they think it's, yeah, well, we've been looking at it as well. And the Big Ten were the first to jump, and we're going to jump now. And you're not going to have reporters. You're not going to have reporters jumping on them. You're just not going to see it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You're not going to see it. So that is what that is something that I'm looking forward to if the Big Ten does pull the trigger on this.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, because all this is being Ross Dellinger with his article this morning, it sure seems like, John, I would like to get your opinion on it, but it sure seems like those 16 universities truly believe this is the way to go. And if they pull the trigger and do this, John, what do you think Michigan and USC ultimately do?
Yeah, I tweeted about it a little bit today. I think Michigan and USC climb on board. I think that right now, Bobby Mack, who is John? I'm John, Bobby Mack. I go by JR on here, but I also go by
I'm
John
sorry.
as well. So, you're fine. JR. You're fine. I go by both.
Sorry.
Zach is normally on here with me, and he's the one that calls me JR the most.
Got it.
No, you're fine, but either one works. But I do think that Michigan and USC will hop on board unless USC has some other big reason that we don't know about, because the biggest thing seems to be that big payout that Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are getting. That's about a $50 million difference. I don't know if that's the only reason, but if that is the only reason, I think they jump on board just because of the potential of more money in the future. And then I think Michigan right now is dealing with, not being the main decision maker here. As you pointed out on your show earlier, today, Ohio State is really the big decision maker here. This is really a Tony Petitti and Ross Bjork baby kind of together here, them working on this project. And I think it comes from Ross Bjork's background with how much of a businessman and a salesman he is. And then Tony Petitti with what he did with the MLB Enterprises.
Yes.
You had a caller point that out today, and I thought that was a fantastic point. So I think all of this stuff coalescing together, it leads Michigan and USC eventually hopping on board with it. Number one, because I don't know if their reasons are good enough to completely, seclude themselves from the Big Ten. And then number two, if they do seclude themselves from the Big Ten, I know independence works for Notre Dame, but it doesn't work for everybody. I know that other conferences are out there, but the SEC is not just going to let you step in right away, number one. And number two, like you pointed out, Michigan doesn't want to be in a conference with some of the teams in the SEC and stuff like that. So why would they want to go away from the Big Ten when they could just stick around and try to build up their influence and things like that a little bit more?
And to be honest, over the last 40 or 50 years, Michigan has had more influence than Ohio State. Ohio State's never really wanted to take the leadership. It's always been a Wisconsin-Michigan faction that has basically led most of the decision among the Big Ten. And Northwestern and Minnesota and Illinois follow behind. And Iowa usually goes with Ohio State, and Nebraska can be either way. And like when we added Oregon and Washington, Iowa was against it. The Buckeyes did not really want to do Washington and Oregon. But at the end of the day, they acquiesced because most of the conference wanted it. And they got some promises that they were going to call the next shot on realignment. And then, of course, when you're talking about the next conference expansion or realignment, JR, the Big Ten has been playing. Not that nothing is settled or nothing is done, but the Big Ten plan has not been to stay at 18. It has been to go to at least to 20. So, I mean, I've done a couple live shows on it. Mark Coyle, the athletic director of the University of Minnesota, who is the most cautious person out there. He cannot win a news conference. He can't. He doesn't want to be in front of the microphone.
Yeah.
He basically has an interview with the St. Paul Pioneer Press about 6 weeks ago, and he says the Big Ten will expand again. It's going to happen within, he said, if it's 2 days or 2 years, somewhere along. I mean, basically, he's like Jim Smith of Maryland, basically saying, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, that was our buddies over at IMS Radio. They did
Yeah.
an interview. We picked it up right away, and
Yeah, you guys
that's one of our most viewed videos.
You did a great job, and I picked it off of you. And but that's like how embedded. They've war gamed all this out. I don't think they know exactly what they're going to do because SEC is also planning. But so to get back to this, how would this affect those decisions? Like if, for example, Miami, let's say Miami wanted, would UC investment give Miami $100 million, $120 million, right? And then Miami gets 4% or something. And of course, Illinois loses a little bit. Minnesota loses, we all lose a little bit to give the stake to Miami. But we would also get a little bit more money. How does that affect conference expansion? But getting back to what you said about, like, where would Michigan go, right? If the Big Ten does this deal and the SEC does this deal, what is the ACC and the Big 12 going to do? Are they going to? They've been trying this now. Let's be honest. The Big 12 they've been trying to do something like this, but your Utahs and your Kansas have been saying, I don't know if I want to sign this long grant of rights with the Big 12 to extend it from 2030 to 2045 or 46 because Big Ten might be knocking on my door. So again, if these other conferences, are they going to follow up? And if they do it, they're going to have to extend their grant of rights for a long time. So, like a Michigan, if they go somewhere else, they're going to be signing a long-term grant of rights. So I just don't think that's an option for Michigan and Michigan and USC. I think their only option is if they don't do this deal, they don't do the deal, and they see all the other Big Ten schools receive a cash infusion, which may not bother them too much, but then have all the other schools have a stake in the Big Ten enterprises. When they don't, I think that might be what gets them on board. And I think you might be right, JR. At the end of the day, I think they're probably going to jump in.
Bobby Mack brings up a good comment here. Appreciate you being here, Bobby Mack. He brings up a good comment here, and I think that this is important for us to look at and distinguish a little bit because Bobby Mack says the deal reminds me of Chicago's paid parking sale when they will lose $100 billion on the deal just to get quick cash. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Greg, but the difference between something like that and something like this deal is that in that Chicago paid parking deal, if you're familiar with what we're talking about here, that was when they were basically selling ownership to the parking meters and stuff like that in Chicago to a private equity group instead of selling off a stake, which is what they would, the Big Ten would be doing here. So there's no ownership involved of the UC investments, and that's kind of the big part that needs to be understood by people to where this wouldn't be UC investments coming in, owning the Big Ten and telling everybody what to do, that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. However, so if this deal gets done, UC investments would have a 10% stake of future earnings. Okay. But they're not going to have a vote on Big Ten. They are and they're not. Okay. They're going to have a seat at the board of the Big Ten enterprises. So this for-profit enterprise that we're all trying to get more money, right? UC investment is they're trying to get back their $2.4 billion plus a lot more. And all the other members of the board, which is all of us Big Ten schools, We want to get more back from what if we wouldn't have given the 10% stake. So we're trying to create bigger revenue streams in which the belief is we can if we all do everything together. This is a 20-year deal. After year 15 or on year 15, UC Investments can sell their stake. Okay? They can sell their stake back to us, back to our schools, or sell it to another firm, but then there's only 5 years left on the deal. Okay? And then after that, maybe if it's a great success, you do something else. So the question is, now, JR, you're an Illinois guy, right?
Illinois and Ohio State, yes.
Okay, Illinois and Ohio State. I don't want to offend you this side of your family, whatever. Okay.
They're pretty much together in this, so it's both ways.
So let's just take Illinois because Ohio State's going to be fine no matter. Okay, Illinois. Let's take Illinois. Okay, how much in the next 20 years Illinois has to figure how much money am I going to make in Big Ten conference payouts? That includes media money. That includes Big Ten Network third tier money. That includes NCAA tourney credit, blah, 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 blah. Conference payouts. How much money am I going to earn in conference payouts from now into 2046 without this Big Ten Enterprises, without us giving 10% to some UC investment fund, without the $120 million Illinois? How much money are we gonna make now versus how much money are we gonna make if we give 10% of our future earnings to UC investments, but we get $120 million cash infusion and we have this for-profit Big Ten Enterprises? I don't know the answer to that, right? Because I know nothing. I barely got 2 quarters that scratched together in my front pocket. I'm not a high finance person, and I don't know nothing really about the Big Ten Enterprises. But Illinois seems to have determined, along with everybody else, except for Michigan and USC, that we are going to make a whole lot more money doing this way versus not doing it. Having a strategic partner, creating our strategic partner as Big Ten Enterprises. And, in all these other conferences have gone down this road, all of them. We're not doing anything in a vacuum. The only thing that makes the Big Ten different is, the ACC, of course, has a whole bunch of issues, right? I mean, you just had 2 schools suing the conference. So the ACC ain't going to be the first one to do it. The Big 12, they have a couple of schools that do not want to sign their next 15, 20 years to the Big 12 because they think they have an opportunity to get to the Big 10. So the Big 12 probably ain't going to be the first one. So now it's between the SEC and the Big Ten, and we're probably going to be the first to do it. But when we do it, others are going to follow.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
It's like the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, same with the Big Ten Network because this is kind of the way the Big Ten has been, and I think that there's been times when it's worked well for them, the Big Ten Network, and then there's also been times where it didn't work well. The 9-game conference schedule is another one where that's kind of bit the Big Ten in the butt a little bit, but thankfully the SEC is now moving over to that kind of stuff. I know that's a different one, but I agree with you that the Big Ten has continually gone out in front, done this stuff, and it does look like the SEC, the Big 12, they're going to kind of be following behind a little bit with it. The Big 12 looks like they have more private equity deals that they're looking at than rather these kind of investment deals, at least from what I've seen and heard, which I think if it's private equity, I'm not for it at all. But this not being private equity, I see a little bit it a little bit different. So I do want to talk about Michigan and USC one more time. So we talked about where would they go. Greg, with all of this stuff coming out, is it actually a possibility, in your opinion, that the Big Ten could leave Michigan and USC behind? Or do you think Michigan and USC could call their bluff and they wouldn't actually do it? Because Michigan and USC are very big brands that obviously contribute a lot to the amount this deal would be. I think if UC Investments does this deal, they're going to come back and say, you don't have Michigan and USC? Okay, we're going to knock that valuation down a little bit more. What do you think?
Well, I'm hoping that Ohio State, Penn State, and the rest of the Big Ten and Tony Petitti have talked to UC Investments and know what value they would get if Michigan and USC were not on board. But yet they're still willing to possibly vote on this on November 21st, right? You would think, now I might be completely wrong. Usually I am, JR. Usually I am. But you would think that Tony Petitti and President Carter, Ohio State, and Bork, whatever, they've talked to UC Investments and they've said, yeah, if Michigan and USC are not on board, how much, what kind of scratch are we looking at? How much, all that stuff has been talked about. It had, in my opinion, it just had to be. No matter what happens, the grant of rights goes to 2036. Okay? Okay, let's pretend that the 16 schools do pull the trigger. And the board of trustees at USC, because they don't have a permanent president, still balk at the idea. The 8-member or whatever board of regents at Michigan still balk at the idea. Okay? The Big Ten grant of rights goes to 2036. That doesn't change this. Okay? Having the deal with the UC investment deal, the other 16 schools going to have to sign an extension grant of rights from 2037 to 2046. So that happens. So Michigan and USC is in the conference until 2036, unless they want to go to the courts like Florida State and Clemson did. And maybe they'll have success, right? Maybe they can find a way to buy out of the conference. I don't think any of that's going to happen. But strange things have, yeah. So I just don't see it happening. But if the 16 schools sign on the dotted line and Michigan and USC don't, it's going to create a fracture in the conference, right? It just is. And that's not good for the conference. USC and Michigan are, massive, incredibly valuable universities. They're not really replaceable. Now, there are other schools knocking on the door right now tonight for months since the ACC settlement. There are schools positioning themselves, negotiating possibly in the future when a lot of things have to get settled in this college football world of the SCORE Act, the SAFE Act, and all this other stuff that's going on. When all that gets settled, hopefully someday, there's going to be some more movement. And there are going to be schools going to happily take an investment deal, right? There are going to be schools happily take the unequal revenue share that the Big Ten will be offering, right? Let's say Georgia Tech. Let's say Georgia Tech wants to come into the conference. They're probably going to be getting what, my lowly Minnesota Gophers are going to take, right? They'll probably get that. Probably no higher than that, which is a whole lot more than what they're going to get in the ACC, right?
Yep.
So there's going to be people trying to get in. So if Michigan and USC really want, if this is a fracture which leads to them leaving, it's going to hurt the Big Ten. It is. I think it probably hurts Michigan and USC more, though, to be honest. Because Michigan is a Big Ten, and USC is as well. I mean, the reason why USC joined the Big Ten was because they knew what the future was. They knew what was going to happen. They knew the student athletes were going to get direct payments. They had to get above the revenue stratification line. This is all the stuff that I reported in 2022. So this is what USC wanted. right? And I don't blame USC for not. I get it. I get it. They think they deserve as much as Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. They deserve the same tier, right? The 190 million and the same revenue, But the other schools have spoken. I'll give you an example, JR. I'll give you an example. Let's just pretend Illinois has a 4.8% stake in the conference. Okay. Minnesota has a 4.6% stake. Illinois is a bigger brand. Illinois is a bigger state. Illinois, a bigger overall market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Minnesota can sit here and go, I don't, Illinois, I mean, we should be getting the same as them. We created this conference in 1896 and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, when you see all the schools coalescing around, no, Illinois, 4.8, and Minnesota, eventually Minnesota's got to be like, okay, is this deal good for us or not? Is it good for us? Okay, we're for it, right?
Right.
The other schools have decided that the number they're getting works for them. But that doesn't seem to be the case for USC.
Well, I think the biggest thing with USC is that, yes, I understand where they're coming from. I also understand, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State have been a part of this conference for a long time. Penn State, they came in the 90s, but they've still been here a while, and they've helped build this conference up to what it is. But there still is the opportunity for the unequal revenue being made based off kind of what the ACC is doing with, enhancements due to whatever it might be, a TV viewership or whatever else. So if USC does believe in themselves and does believe in their brand enough, eventually they would be making as much as, or should be making as much as Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Do you see it the same way?
I agree with you. And thanks for bringing that up. I mean, in this deal, supposedly there's a way for you to improve yourself, improve your stake, improve your revenue money. In USC, I think, is well on their way to doing that. I see Bobby Mack in the chat room says, what is Ohio State, like 20% of the conference valuation? That might be so. I mean, look, Ohio State is not getting the percent of stake that they're really worth, right? Let's be honest.
Which I think that's why everybody's so kind of perplexed why they're the ones kind of leading this a little bit, right?
But I think it's because Ohio State and other people have realized that you are more valuable, everybody but Notre Dame, that you are more valuable together than you are as a standalone. Okay, your content bundled together has more leverage over the media partners than alone. Like Notre Dame, the reason why Notre Dame is loading up their schedules lately, like having Clemson, and now they, is because NBC has told them you have to have this top tier scheduling for you to max out on the NBC deal is a sliding scale deal, unlike our deal. Because it's more of a risk for NBC because Notre Dame is a standalone university. If Notre Dame comes out and starts the season 2-5, the rest of the games aren't really of that much value, and they lose value quickly. In the Big Ten, you are more secure. Your media partners are more secure, so they're going to pay you more top dollar, right? So Ohio State has learned, and they've learned this a long time ago, that being in the Big Ten, playing in front of big markets, right? Markets that have purchasing power, markets that the national advertisers love. When the Big Ten game has 2.4 million viewers, let's say, the purchasing power for the national advertisers in Big Ten markets of a $2.4 million football game is probably worth as much as a 4 million viewed game in the SEC. That's demographics, that's purchasing power. That's what the national that's why they pay so much for Big Ten content. So Ohio State knows that, yes, they're the biggest, entity of the conference, but they would rather surround themselves with Illinois. By the way, Illinois and Ohio State are very tight. Those schools are very. Ohio State don't want to lose Illinois. Okay, Ohio State would not trade Illinois for Tennessee. Straight out, period. End of story. Ohio State does not want to lose Northwestern as a conference mate because of the incredible value that Northwestern gives when it comes to research dollars. So all this plays a part in it too. So I just wanted to bring up Bobby Mack's statement. Yeah, Ohio State, 20%. Yeah, could be.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. But they don't want to, they don't want to, and Michigan's been like this too. Michigan doesn't want to give up the Big Ten. They are,
right.
So that's the whole Michigan thing. I would not have said that. If you would have said, Greg, predict the two schools that would, kind of not be for extending the grant of rights, Michigan would not be one of the schools I would have said.
Really? Yeah. Michigan has been such a big part of the decision making of the conference for so long. I don't really know what they're getting at here in certain areas. I'm not going to call anybody out, but they've had a little bit of their regions and stuff go out there calling this like a payday loan and different things like that. And I get where they're coming from. They're trying to get their audience and get their fans against it because for whatever objective they might have. But I think you're right, and that's the missing part of this conversation that a lot of people have when they say, well, it's not good for the top 5 of the Big Ten, but it's good for everybody else. Research dollars are a big thing, and Northwestern brings in a ton of research dollars for this conference. And, I know a lot of people make fun of Rutgers and Maryland and say, they don't belong, or, UCLA, what'd they come here for? But the fact that you get games with UCLA and Rutgers and Maryland and Ohio State and Nebraska, that's what's going to make this Big Ten Enterprises, to me, so valuable for them to go out and say, listen, nobody wants jersey patches. I get it. I don't want jersey patches either, but this is the way college football is going, and I'm not going to sit here and just complain about it. I'm going to actually talk about what's going on. And those jersey patches are much more valuable when you sell them to 18 teams that are nationwide, rather than saying we're going to put Kroger patches on Ohio State, Purdue, and I don't know, whatever other state has Kroger in it. I don't know what every single state Kroger is in.
But... No, I think you're absolutely right. And a good example of like Brett Yormark, let's take the Big 12, for example. Brett Yormark has spent a lot of time, a lot of political IOUs that were owed to him because he did such a great job with the media deal and was able to poach the Pac-12. And Brett Yormark spent a lot of time trying to get UConn into the conference. Okay. The reason why he was trying to get UConn in the conference is because he realized that the Big 12 needs a better blend going forward. They've got a lot of schools with a lot of great support, fan base, right? Good brands, none of them really massive, but good brands, But Brett Yormark understood that he needed a bigger market, a bigger Big 12 market, a UConn, get the Eastern media market, media to pay more attention to the Big 12. That's why Delaney got Maryland and Rutgers for demographics and plus their AAU and population, but they also wanted the New York media market to talk about Big Ten more often, and that's worked. Well, that's what Brett Yormark wanted, right? He wanted UConn to come in, also because the people that he was talking to about creating a strategic partner to get a private equity deal or a public capital deal, whatever, some of those those firms wanted UConn as part of the deal. Because they look at the Big 12 and they say they're missing this, they're missing that. That's why the Big 12 can't get a conference network, right? Because they just don't have the big enough market. So that's, the Big 10 has always been conscious of having the right blend. Oregon and Washington. Oregon is this great brand multiplier, incredible brand, right? Washington is this huge research university. Seattle is a huge media. it was the perfect blend. Washington and Oregon, perfect blend. UCLA, USC was a little bit different. Fox wanted all of Los Angeles. UCLA came in. So that, so again, not, if you look at even us lowly Big Ten schools like Minnesota, my beloved Golden Gophers, right? I mean, we're kind of unique. We're kind of, we don't offer football play. We don't, there's a lot of things we don't do. Our basketball program is going to be at the bottom again. But we're the 17th largest market. We have huge purchasing power in Minnesota. We provide the hockey players. We all have our parts, right? And I can't imagine Michigan and USC wanting to figure out another stable of schools. And there's no, USC had an option to go independent, but they looked at it and said, nah, it doesn't measure up to the Big Ten because standalone is a risk.
Right.
And what about Notre Dame, JR?
Yeah.
What about Notre Dame? What if the Big Ten pulls the trigger on this?
Well, and like I've talked about with Notre Dame before, to me, it's going to come down to the scheduling at some point. And we're already seeing the scheduling, as you pointed out, with them needing to schedule bigger games so that way they can, get the max amount of money from their NBC deal. That playing bigger games so that way they can get into the college football playoffs. And then on top of that, you have teams like USC that are saying, we don't want to play you outside of week 1, 2, or 3, and so some of these schools that they have traditionally played for years, like USC is saying, well, we need to play you at this time instead because of the travel and everything else going on with our program, which is going to make it even harder for Notre Dame to try and schedule these things. At some point, if Notre Dame has like 2 years in a row where they only play 8 Power 4 teams again. I think that happened last season. That is not going to be a very good situation for them, and I think that is probably what will eventually move them to the Big Ten or something else. They better just hope that it happens in a time period and when the Big Ten will still take them. I don't see a reason why Big Ten wouldn't take them, but I also didn't see UC investments coming, so who knows?
Yeah, but what if the Big Ten Enterprises happens and it becomes really obvious that this thing probably is going to work, like really good, right? Well, Notre Dame ain't going to be able to create a Notre Dame Enterprises that's going to be as part. I mean, it doesn't, again, right? The SEC creates it, the Big Ten creates it, even the Big 12 creates it, and Notre Dame once again can't quite. And it's just more of a bigger hurdle for them to keep up. So maybe that's another reason why the Big Ten is so anxious to do this. Maybe they have plans. We know they have plans, but we just don't know what they are.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the Big Ten Enterprises is the biggest kind of mystery about all of this. I don't necessarily like it because of the jersey patches and everything else that are probably coming, but it is a very important factor. And I think as we learn more about this is going to become much clearer. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
No. No, you didn't cut me off. Nope.
Okay. But that's all I was gonna kind of end with there was the Big Ten Enterprises. It's the biggest mystery of it all.
Yep.
I don't see Michigan and USC going anywhere. They might balk at it for a little bit, but I think when push comes to shove, they're gonna ride on board with this for all the points that we've made this entire time. And I think that Big Ten, we'll see how this all works out. It could be really good like the Big Ten Network. It could flop.
Yeah.
I tend to think the Big Ten knows what they're doing, but
let me ask you a football question.
Okay, go ahead.
So what's going to happen here at the end of the Big Ten season? Are we Ohio State, Indiana? How much of a shot do you give Indiana, and what do you look at the Big Ten schools in the college football playoffs? I do agree with Sam that USC has a shot to get in. A 10-2 USC versus a 10-2 Vanderbilt, who gets in? That type of thing, but. So how do you see the future playing out here?
Yeah, I talked about the USC Vanderbilt thing a little bit. I did an AP poll reaction
Okay.
on my secondary channel called JR's Big Ten Football News and Rumors
Okay.
because we weren't doing the AP poll reaction here, so I still want to put it out there. So if anybody
Yep.
wants an AP poll reaction, go in the
Okay.
description. It's down there. You can link to it. But basically, I think USC should get in over Vanderbilt if they are 10-2, or
Mhm.
even if they're 9-3 and Vanderbilt is there because of the schedule at the end of the season
Mhm.
and how impressive USC has looked with their offense. They don't necessarily have just kind of like a one man wrecking
No.
ball like Diego Pavia. Listen, the tight end for Vanderbilt is very good too. Stowers, I think is his name.
Yes.
He's very good too, so I don't want
Yep.
to take
Yep.
anything
He
away
is.
from him.
Yep.
But I think that USC has proven they're one of the best one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the nation. And I think when you have an incredible trait like that, that is something that should put you over the top when you kind of need to get in. USC on FanDuel right now sits at plus 390 to make it, so they're definitely not out of it. And I don't think a
No.
loss completely puts them out of it, but that loss can't be to Oregon. They have to beat Oregon if they want to get
Yes.
into
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah. I am.
Indiana's in. I don't think there's any question. Even if they drop 2 games, I think that Indiana's done enough. I don't see them dropping 2 games, but even if they were, I think that Indiana's done enough that they're going to slide them in there. Ohio State obviously is making it. Oregon, and even if they lose to a USC, I still think they have a good shot of making it. Notre Dame could be pretty difficult there,
Yeah.
but I want to see what happens with these next rankings because them coming in at ninth in the college
Yeah.
football playoff rankings was pretty concerning to me. I would love to see them above Ole Miss because, quite frankly, they're just better than Ole Miss in my
Yeah.
opinion. I think on a neutral field, Oregon. I think Sam was saying it. Oregon would be favored by over a touchdown in that game. I don't think Ole Miss is anything better than what Washington is. Personally, that's just me.
Yeah.
But I think Oregon should make it, and there probably will be enough parity to get them there. But Michigan is kind of the other one there, and all they have to do beat Northwestern, beat Maryland. I get it, like that they're both
Yeah.
away. You beat Ohio State. You should get into the playoffs. You should make it in there for that big kind of
Yeah.
win. And as we know, Ohio State's gone into that game the past few years thinking they're going to win it every time. And I think
I
last year's
just can't
the
see it.
best example of who knows what could happen.
I can't. I said the same thing last year though, but I can't see it. I cannot see Michigan.
I can't see it either, but I'm like you. I said the same thing last year.
I think the more I look at these playoffs, as crazy as this sounds, it's some of it is kind of settled. Like my mind is being switched here even in the last few hours. I really think they're going to put Alabama, Texas A&M, Indiana, Ohio State as the teams that get the bye. Like if Alabama loses that second game, they lose the SEC championship game. I think they're still going to have them as the number 4. Now, I wouldn't agree with it because they lost to Florida State. I would have Texas Tech ahead of them, but I don't see it happening. I think they're going to put Alabama in there. So if they do that, JR, then it's going to be Georgia 5 if they beat Georgia Tech, and it's going to be Ole Miss 6, and then it's going to be Texas Tech 7. Now you're looking at the 8, 9, 10 of Oregon, Notre Dame, USC, Vanderbilt. I think that's the next batch. But I think Texas Tech could go 12-1 and get the 7th seed. And I don't think I'm going to agree with that. I think Texas Tech should get a higher seed, but I think that's what they're going to be given.
I tend to agree, especially when you give favor to a team like Oklahoma for having an injured quarterback. Texas Tech had an injured quarterback when they lost their game.
Yeah.
But Greg, we both know this. You and I both are fans of Big Ten teams. I know you're not necessarily a Big Ten guy, but everybody in college football can see what's happening with the SEC bias going on right now.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
exclusive to the
yeah.
AP poll. It's not exclusive to the College Football Playoff Committee. It's kind of the narrative in all of college football right now. I personally don't think there is an SEC team that's good enough to win the national championship this year. I think Texas A&M probably has the best chance, but I don't know if that defense has been consistent enough this year for me to think that they can do it for four straight games in the season. But I tend to agree with you because of the SEC, favor and stuff. You're gonna
Yeah.
see two SEC teams in there, two Big Ten teams in there because of Ohio State and Indiana,
Yeah.
and then you're probably gonna see a load of SEC teams. I would not be surprised at all if you see Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Texas get in there. Even if Texas is 9-3, I still think they have a better shot of being in
Yeah.
there than a 10-2 USC team, unfortunately.
Yeah, a 9-3 Texas can make it. A 9-3 Oklahoma, I don't think so, but a 9-3 Texas, yeah,
I agree.
I think that could happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be very difficult to beat the Buckeyes or the Hoosiers. I think that is such a tall task. When Surratt gets back, and Mendoza's going to. I think those two teams. I think Indiana is so incredibly talented with Kamara and Aiden and Pons, and I think they've got talent all over the football field, and they know they're well coached. They never screw up. They get off and on the field. They don't have all these pre-snap penalties. Geez, I'm talking like a golden gopher.
Well, and you're exactly right. They have Kamara, they have Fisher, but the thing that's been most impressive these past few games is the guys that they've had step up as well, right? Charlie Becker stepping up when Elijah Surratt was out. Amari Farrell, Lewis Moore, they've stepped up as safeties for Indiana this year. Isaiah Jones has been fantastic. Tyreek Tucker has quietly been one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of the country, but nobody talks about him because he, number one, nobody ever talks about interior defensive linemen. I get it.
Yeah.
It's not, the sexiest position out there, but he is definitely somebody that wrecks offensive lines out there and does a great job with it. As long as Indiana's offensive line can hold up, as long as they can hold up, because they have some injuries right now. I think if they have all their starters in, I believe in them. As long as they can hold up, they should be fine, and I think they'll make the national championship game. But for me, that's the biggest question mark for them so far. It's not because of talent. Like I said, it's because more of the injuries.
Yeah, last year I was a big Fernando Mendoza fan. I watched those California games. Man, that guy was under pressure. Every time he went back, he was under pressure. And he still completed like 67% of his passes at California last year. He was amazing last year. And then when the news broke that he was going to Indiana, I did a break-in live show on it. And I'm trying to convince everybody in the chat, this guy's great. This guy's even better than Curtis Rourke. And most people are like, come on. I could not believe that Cignetti got this guy. And goodness gracious. They're going to be a tough out.
Greg, I should have been talking to you preseason, man, because I was stupid enough to say that Indiana's offense would be worse this year than what they were last year because I just thought they broke so many records. Curtis Rourke was able to throw over the middle so well. They had the running backs and everything. I thought, okay, the offensive line is going to be improved, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to replicate what they did last year. Long behold, I'm an idiot because
no one
is amazing.
No one's a bigger idiot than I am. I say I am the reelected mayor of Loserville City. I kept saying that Indiana was more talented team than last year. I kept saying it over and over and over again. But yet I said Indiana's going to finish 5th in the Big Ten because something's going to go wrong, blah, 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 blah. And it's, it was ridiculous. I should have stuck to my guns because nothing has, other than the injuries, they have played spectacularly. And,
I vividly remember one time we had an Indiana fan. I forget who it was. I mean, we have many Indiana fans that listen to the show here. I really appreciate the Indiana fan base. They're a great fan base. But we had an Indiana fan, and he said, "Am I crazy to think Indiana can go 12-0?" And Zach and I said, "No, you're not crazy, but I wouldn't expect it. Like they do have a tough schedule. Penn State, Oregon, Illinois. Like they do have some tough teams on here. That's definitely something you need to be aware of. But we said 12-0 is possible. 10-2 probably the most likely, but still make the playoffs at that. And long behold, I wish I could figure out who that was because I need to go give him his flowers because he was
Yeah.
exactly right. Indiana's going to go 12-0.
What are your feelings about Illinois this year?
Illinois struggled with injuries this year
Yeah.
mostly. I do think that the defense was not exactly what we expected. Defensive line got better, but the pass rush just was not there most of the season. Xavier
Yeah.
Scott, that injury really hurt him. And then the offensive line for Illinois has just been atrocious. They brought back so many guys. You thought the chemistry was going to be better. They fixed it after the Ohio State game or in that USC game. So that was one of the things that helped them beat USC, but it was too little too late because at that point, once you lost by, what was it, 60, 50 points to Indiana, if you lost by that much to Ohio State, I think you could survive. I don't think you can survive losing by that much to Indiana. And as much as people respect Indiana right now, there's still people out there that say, but it's Indiana and you lose by that much to them. I don't know if I ever thought Illinois was going to make the playoffs, even if they went like a 10-2, because they had that blemish on their record.
Yeah. It's Illinois. I had them like 4th or 3rd or whatever, and it just didn't work out. It's been a tough year. It's been
and they could still finish high up there. I mean, I keep telling Illinois fans, you could still finish with 10 wins. Like this back-to-back 10-win seasons, that's really good for Illinois to be able to do that. But Greg, since we're talking football, what's your thoughts on your Gophers, man? Drake Lindsey, talking about him a little bit earlier.
If it wasn't for Drake Lindsey, you'd probably have to search for me standing on some high ledge, some highway. It's been what's the best way to describe this season? The Minnesota Golden Gophers are the worst 6-3 team in the country, and it's not even close. Absolutely brutal. We have been manhandled, beat up by everybody, except for Northwestern State. Literally.
Well, Nebraska. You guys beat up
Nebraska. I keep forgetting. But Nebraska has psychological issues when they play Minnesota. But other than that, we have been whooped. Decimated. Purdue dominated us. Rutgers dominated us. Everybody has just annihilated us. We've got problems. And and I can't even, other than Darius Taylor, I can't even blame it on injuries. It's not an injury problem. It's we've been just dominated, JR. Long swaths of football games. You just sit there and we lose every battle that we're in. Purdue said, oh, geez, we're dominating Minnesota. Let's give them the football game. That's what happened. Rutgers, we're beating up Minnesota. Let's give them the football game. Michigan State had us beat. Oh, by the way, let's give Minnesota the victory. That's the only we're 4-2 in the Big Ten, and we very well easily could be 1-5. And that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Drake Lindsey, thank God for Drake Lindsey, because he has looked good, way better than the help he's been given. Right. The running game's atrocious. Drake Lindsey has been a godsend. I think he's going to be very good next year, JR. Now, the Gophers won't be, but Drake Lindsey next year, look out. He's going to be the best quarterback on a 4-8 team in the country. That's my prediction.
I like Drake Lindsey a lot. I think he does a good job, moving the team down the field and taking chances when it's warranted. He takes a little, he could take a few more chances, but I also understand the wide receiver talent out there.
He's become a little check downish, but he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of talent. He does. He's a good kid, smart kid. That Gophers got issues, my friend. They've got issues.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if PJ Fleck can address him in the offseason.
If he's back next year.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Bobby Mack with the $5 super chat. Bobby Mack, we appreciate it. He says, internet question of the day. If we had a draft and everyone is eligible, would Ohio State have 5 of the top 7 draft picks today. So I don't know how much you follow the draft, Greg, but this has been a bit of a topic for Ohio State a little bit lately because you do have Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Julian Sayin,
Yeah.
Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles. I'm probably running out of names at this point, but there's many of them. Caleb Downs, how can I forget? They're this is a loaded Ohio State team. Not all of those guys will go to the draft, but if they did, would Ohio State have that many players drafted in the top 7? What do you think?
Sonny Styles is fantastic. I love Sonny Styles.
Uh-huh.
I love Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs. I guess.
What's not to love?
I mean, it's just ridiculous. It really is. And again, I saw someone talking about Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports that said this. It's like Ohio State's got all this talent. They're just fantastic. But they also do all these little things correct. I mean, they it's hard to describe, and I'm not going to waste anyone's time, but the Buckeyes are really like, they have this. I think Ryan Day thinks a lot about recruiting and having guys on his team that have a very high IQ, football IQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, the Buckeyes are the most talented team in the country, but they might be the smartest too. Mm-hmm. And that really infuriates me. I mean, because it's just like, my gosh. I see other football programs that have got some talent, but you watch them and like the Florida State Seminoles, that team, their players have to be told, you're in this jumbo package. I mean, you can see it on the side. The Buckeyes are like, boom, 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 boom. It's everything. Ryan Day, it's just a machine out there. So they got all this. Like, I watched that 42-3 Ohio State over Minnesota. Buckeyes there wasn't even a bead of sweat coming out on anybody on that sideline, and it was just the machine. They knew exactly what they were going to do. I'm sorry. Get back to your question. Yes, sure. Why not? 5 out of 7 sounds good to me, Bobby.
I agree with you. I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked about this Ohio State team and Ryan Day in particular with the guys that he's recruiting right now. There's a lot of Ohio State fans that have been not happy with the way the recruiting has gone this season. Really? They were barely in the top 10. They were hoping to go out there and pay guys a little bit more after they paid $20 million. They've been trying to follow the revenue sharing a little bit more, so they've not been quite as aggressive with the NIL. But now you have guys like Jay Timmons. They just got the defensive lineman Ruffin today, he's really good. He's only a top 200 player, but he is underrated. I think he could be a top 100 player in the country, if you ask me. And they're starting to creep back up there to the top 5, but I don't think Ryan Day recruits off the recruiting rankings. I'm with you. He recruits off of smart football players, guys that are disciplined, guys that are going to come in, be good culture pieces, because he doesn't want guys that are going to come in and not take it seriously. I just read an excerpt from a book today where Will Howard was saying that basically the entire time in practice, Ryan Day just basically spends the entire time chewing everyone out and just basically saying everything they do is not good enough. And it's like, you gotta be pretty mentally strong to be able to go through a practice where the head coach the entire day is just telling you not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, get better, do this better. Of course, he's encouraging a little bit here and there, I would think, but for him to just basically tell everybody like this is not good enough. That's why you don't see the slip-ups against Purdue. That's why you don't see the slip-ups against, sorry, Greg, but Minnesota. Like, that's why you don't see the slip-ups against some of these teams, because every single time they touch the field, Ryan Day is telling these guys, it's not good enough, get better. And that's a very powerful motivator.
Yeah, and it kind of like the opposite to me is Nebraska. Maybe they've changed a little bit under Matt Rule, but under Scott Frost and Riley, they would have a top 20 recruiting, 15, 25. I think it's usually in the low 20s lately. And but they were getting guys that 4-star players that the bigger programs just passed up because there was too much issues. Like, it just, Buckeyes and Michigan and the Lions would say, nah, we'll go somewhere else. And so Nebraska would get these 4-star, and it's like, none of these guys are going to work out. None of them are going to work out because they're all idiots, right? But Nebraska took them. So like Ohio State's the opposite. It's like they've got such a high standard. And so if I was a Buckeye fan, which I couldn't imagine being, no offense to you Buckeyes out there, but I would not worry about the rankings. I think recruiting rankings. I think that's the last thing y'all got to worry about.
I mean, as long as the guys got talent, you bring them in, they got talent, they got the body structure and everything else that you need. Sounds like Ryan Day is going to turn them into something special there at Ohio State. And if they don't turn into something special, guess what? You got somebody else right behind them. I mean, they're playing a freshman right now, Zion Grady, I think is his name. Actually, he's a really good player. He just passed up a senior in snaps this past game. I was looking at the PFF snaps, as I like to do for every team, and he passed a senior in snaps, and it's like, this is the scariest part about this Ohio State team, because they're going to lose a bunch of players again this year, and people are going to say, okay, well, they lost a bunch of players. They can't be good enough again. Well, when you got guys behind them like Devin Sanchez, Zion Grady, some of these freshmen, it's like, okay, you can lose a bunch of players, but you're just going to get really good players right back after them again. And as we know in college football right now, that's the hardest part of your roster, is stacking talent. And I don't know if there's anybody in the country right now that's stacking talent like Ohio State is.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, all right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that, whether it's, private capital related, UC investments, football related, is there anything else you would like to bring up before we get out of here?
No, I think we covered it. I do appreciate you having me on, JR. Hopefully you have me on again. I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much.
Oh, no, I loved it.
If I did, I apologize. Sorry to bring the negativity about my beloved Golden Gophers, but it's been, been rough. It's been
Greg,
rough.
The number one thing we say on this show is that we talk every single Big Ten team. There is not a Big Ten team out there. Sometimes Big Ten shows, and I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but not just Big Ten. Sometimes SEC shows will kind of have their favorites, and we do have some of our favorites here. We like to talk Indiana and Ohio State and Illinois a lot, but we talk every single Big Ten team. If there's a game that goes on that weekend, you can bet we're going to bring it up in the recap. If there's a game going on the coming weekend, you can bet we're going to bring it up in the preview, because we don't specialize in a certain team here and there. Here we cover every single Big Ten team.
So
if you're going to cover the conference, you're going to cover it all.
So our struggles. It's been smoke and mirrors. That we are the worst 6-3 team in the country, and it's not even close. I
didn't say it. You did, but that's fine.
It's the metrics would say it. Okay. The metrics would show it.
True.
All right. I appreciate it. JR, appreciate it. And hopefully you have me on again. It's been great. Thank you.
I'm sure we will. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk later.
You got it, buddy.
All right, everybody. That was Greg Flugog coming in here on the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate his time, and we appreciate your time coming in to the Big Ten Huddle. No Zach, like I said, but Zach will be back here in a couple weeks. He's off on a European vacation, having a great time. So we will see what happens in the next coming days. If there's any breaking news, of course, you can always check here at the Big Ten Huddle, or check the secondary channel we have, JR's Big Ten Football News and Rumors. Kind of dive into a little bit more kind of team specific stuff and a little bit more kind of rumory stuff over there. You'll still get singular videos here as you guys do watch those, and we appreciate it, but definitely want to get more content out there for you guys. So we started up a second channel for that. All right. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. If you made it this far, 2 hours into the episode, boy, you must really like Big Ten football, and we appreciate it. So we will see you next time, and next time would be Tuesday. Tuesday night, we'll be live on YouTube here, and then we'll have a podcast and everything for a preview, and we'll go over the college football playoff top 25 then as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.